Palamoana Exiles, this is the next stop of the Path of Exile 2 hype train here on Talkative Try. We are speaking to Captain Lance about Path of Exile 2, his thoughts on everything related to the sequel to Pee-wee 1. Tomorrow is Big Ducks, the day after, game director Jonathan Rogers. Enjoy.
Later.
Now, Lance, you might not enjoy computer engineering, but do you think you're going to enjoy Path of Exile 2? What are your initial thoughts after
Oh,
that
absolutely.
insane reveal, dude?
Dude, it looks so freaking good. To me, it's like they're taking everything I like about Path of Exile 1, they're amping it up, they're adding in phenomenal, basically, aesthetics. One of the biggest things that Path of Exile 1 lacks is aesthetics. We had that crazy cinematic they gave us, which is something that's always been like, what we had before was a 5-second clip of Katava like moving his hand, and then that was the only cinematic in PoE. So that's a huge upgrade, and then just the visuals on the skills, the area design, the boss design, it just looks so freaking good. And
Now, I know what you're infamous for is being the longest running Path of Exile creator in a league, making new
I
build after new build, churning out entertaining
that
content.
might be maybe the past year, um,
Yeah,
that I've started being one of the few people that just plays through the entire league. But I think before that, I think Mathel I'd recognize more as the the
very
goat of being
true.
the
He
dude who
never
just plays the
stops.
whole way through.
Never stops. Now, with the customization options coming in PoE 2, are you already cooking up some wild builds? If so, like, what do you think is going to be busted based on what we saw on the Ascendancies? I saw you did like a 5-hour cooking stream where you were diving into
Well,
all
I
the
mean,
info.
to start off with, it's all completely speculation based on the fact we don't really have the full picture of the tree. There's a lot of missing nodes in these ascendancies. Like like ascendancies, pretty much on every single one they showcased less nodes that like more nodes are unknown than are known on each of the ascendancy classes. Like for example, the Infernalists, they showed us like 4 nodes and there's like 6 or 7 other nodes we don't know. And so it's just a matter of you can go on with an idea and be like, I want to build around this thing, but you might find out you pull up to that ascendancy tree, you click on it, being like, I'm gonna go Infernalist because of this thing, and then you look at the other tree on Blood Mage, and then there's this other node that you didn't see before, and last minute you might just like screw everything. I'm playing with that, and like initially, just talking about the overpowered thing or what I think would be strong. Right now, everything to me seems like ES is gonna be really strong in terms of scalability, but there's a few like unknowns because to me, I feel like GG is pretty good at balance to some extent, and they're giving you all these tools and levers you can pull. There's no way they're going to perfectly balance it, but I'm looking at ES. I'm thinking this seems so strong, but I think it's so obvious that there's no way there wasn't somebody that says this is balanced for this reason. They have something that checks it, and so I'm still waiting to be like, is it going to be a sustained problem? Is there going to be some issue with dealing with ailments with ES? But yeah, that's I don't know. I looked at a few different things, and right now ES is far and away looking the strongest to me as an initial. If I'm going to build a character, this is what I'm going to shoot for: is some sort of setup with ES.
Now, do you think that they're going to release the Ascendancy information early, or do you think we're just going to go in day one, play our characters, and the first person to get to the trials is going to reveal it all on Reddit or Twitter or wherever?
I think they're going to keep us blind as long as they can. I think they understand how much the discovery period is an exciting thing for players. So I think what they're going to give us is maybe they'll give us some teasers of uniques. They'll do some more interviews with Jonathan, like you have an interview coming up with Jonathan where he's going to drop some pretty big information. But I really think they're going to hold out on the passive tree and the ascendancy, and most likely it might get the data mined when they release the initial download for it, and maybe we'll have information the day before just because of something like a data mine. But I think they're going to hold out on the actual details as if they can all the way to the launch.
How's your willpower, Lance? Are you going to look at the data mine details, or are you going to go in blind?
I'm absolutely going to look at the data mine. I don't have the control. I care too much about trying to make a cool build. I would not have the control. I would 100%. I see the data mine. Somebody links it in chat. I click it instantly. I get rickrolled. I would fall for it. It's just I would like hook, line, and sinker. If somebody has a data mine and they're linking to me in chat, I'm gonna fall for it. But like at the same time, I'm hoping it isn't the case. Like I would rather just be completely blind for everyone, even knowing that I would like 100% click it if I saw it. The next 2 weeks are going to be excruciating just because of the waiting process of being like, I want to plan things, but I can't plan things. And it's just like that
I
feeling
know.
of just being like, this is a long 2 weeks.
I've never been a part of this type of release for grinding your games. I've been playing since Blight League. How long have you been playing?
I started in Breach League. Basically, my brother got
Oh,
me into it, and we were playing it as like a group play thing. And then I got way more addicted to it than he did. But
does he
I'm
still
I'm
play?
gonna get him. I'm gonna get him back because I'm gonna give him a key for PoE 2 and
When
return
did he
the
stop
favor.
playing?
What's that?
When did he stop playing? Was it pretty quick after you got addicted?
Um, yeah, decently. He also had like at the time I was in college and I had tons of free time type of
Mm,
thing, and he was having his first couple kids. Um, for me, the only reason I'm able to play PoE right now with my children is because I've turned it into a job. Basically, every other like hobby or thing I had that I did with free time has been deleted from the things I spend my time doing. Like for example, I liked reading a decent amount. I'd read like a lot of Brandon Sanderson books, and I have the next book in a series for like The Way of Kings, which is a series Brandon Sanderson's writing that I really liked, really was into. I have the next book that I was excited about reading, and I still have not read it over like I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years since the most recent one that I didn't read was, or maybe even longer than that.
yeah,
And it's just like I don't think I have the time for it. And you have to make those calls. I mean, you're gonna experience that too because you
dude, I get it.
had just had a recent baby as well. I
Mm-hmm.
think you
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah. Two kids. It's tough. You grind a little bit, and hopefully it's worth it at the end of the day. And with Path of Exile too, does your family understand what's about to happen, Lance? Do they get it?
I mean, my wife does. My kids are they're pretty unaware. Like
Yeah.
they're 4, 3, and 2. They're not.
You have 3 kids?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, that's
yeah.
wild, man.
Got the triple combo.
Yeah,
Boy, girl,
definitely.
boy.
Have you at all tried to introduce them to a basic ARPG like Minecraft Dungeons, the 4-year-old? Because I started playing Diablo 2 when I was like 4 or 5, man. Maybe my
I
dad was just unhinged and he just said, go at it. And that's not common, but I think it's common because that's what happened to me.
I have not. And my reason being is although I tend to think that this is gonna maybe sound stupid, but I feel like I've learned a lot of things from playing video games throughout like I don't know if this is a good point for video games or not, but I feel like I've learned hand-eye coordination, a level of logical thinking. Like I've played a lot of like strategy games. I feel like there's been benefits, but at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, do I want to introduce them to video games or screens this early on? I'm thinking maybe just trying to avoid screens as much as possible for as long as possible, just to like I want them to go outside and be like, outside is fun, to have their imagination, stuff like that. So I'm gonna try to keep that intact as long as possible. Um, I don't know if
That's
that's the right
incredible.
approach, but that's what I would try for.
No, that's an excellent reason, and you don't have to share any of your loot with them either if they're not playing. You can keep it
Oh,
all
I
for
wouldn't be
yourself,
sharing the
right?
loot. I'd be
Yeah.
having them. They'd be getting me loot. They'd be
Oh,
earning their
okay.
keep. But
Keeping King's March going, your own
yeah,
map
my
runners and
little
everything.
little map runners
Yeah,
have
there you
their
go.
have their newborn RNG.
There you go, 100%. Now, what I kind of so I know builds super cool, and you're totally right. A lot of it is completely speculative, and it's really hard to dive into the exacts of what we're going to be making on day one. Maybe a weekend we'll have a little bit better of an idea. I think though, with the overview that they did of the end game, there's quite a bit to chat about there. Initial thoughts on current Atlas, which obviously is so much better than what we had all the way back when you started playing in Breach with the very basic Atlas, the Shaper Elder blobs chasing each other through the Atlas, and now, right? How do you think that the current Atlas in PoE 1 matches up against the idea for PoE 2's Atlas, which is basically a massive Civ board? I know you just said you play strategy games. Do you play games like Civ and the like?
I've not played Civ. Strategy games I've played have
Okay.
been like turn-based games like Heroes of Might and
Okay.
Magic or real-time
Okay.
strategy like Age of Empires 2.
Okay.
Um, Never gotten the Civ franchise, but it's
Okay.
a few different things like that. Was
Yeah.
when I played a lot when I was younger,
Yeah.
and a
So how do
little
you
bit
think
when
they
I was
match
in
up?
college.
The new Atlas versus old Atlas.
So yeah, as for the new Atlas versus the old Atlas, I'm just gonna talk about one of my things I'm like wondering is
Yeah.
in current Atlas PoE, it's you get to find a layout you want and you get to run that over and over, and a lot of people like that aspect. I'm wondering how will it feel with you don't necessarily get to target the same map over and over again. Will that feel good if the layouts are like generally just like good in general? I think it'll be probably fine. In terms of like how like Cells is an example of PoE one where it's a map that's just like it's annoying to run through because it's got all these like awkward doors you have to keep unlocking. I'm hoping it's the case that where in general the zones you go into are zones that feel good to play in or the environments or whatever, which I think they will. They have amazing environments from pretty much everything I've seen. It's just from Doriani's like mechanical Aztec temple layouts type of things to the do you remember the prison zone they showcased with the water just like going through?
Oh
I think
yeah.
this is an Act 4 from like the
It's Act
Exile con
4.
that they
It's
showcased, but
Zoro's prison. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just saying like the stuff they have just looks it's got so much variety, looks so cool. I'm hoping that it ends up being the case that regardless of the fact you don't get to redo the same zone over again, it feels fresh, it feels new, it's enjoyable. So I'm excited for that aspect of I'm not necessarily doing the same thing over again, and the variety feels good in terms of layouts actually being good. That's like a caveat. Like if the layouts end up being bad, even if the variety is cool, could be an issue. But I'm excited for the example where the end game isn't necessarily just the same map over and over again, and it still is like something that you enjoy. So that's an excitement slash maybe it could be bad, maybe it could be good if the layouts are however that goes out. And the other thing I'm wondering about is with the infinitely expanding outward thing, how does that end up playing out if you clear 1,000 maps around? What if you clear 10,000 maps around? Are you going to be dragging yourself all the way to the outer rim? I'm hoping there's some sort of like way to deal with that in terms of like skipping around. I don't know if they've addressed that at all.
They did address that with Siggy D. There's some shortcuts to quickly maneuver throughout the map, so that
Okay,
that
okay.
exact scenario goes away. The
Because
last
that
map you
that is that
completed.
was like one of the things where I'm like, oh, this is really cool, just infinitely going out. But as eventually that infinitely going out does not get detrimental. So if they have a plan for that, then I'm all excited for it. I
Yeah,
like the visuals a lot of the freaking. It's just like this aesthetic board. You can see like the tower with the maze around it, and like I don't know. I just think it looks good. It's just like,
doesn't it?
okay, this is where I'm gonna go fight this big boss. I'm
Right.
setting up for this guy who's locked in this cage or a girl. It could be Zana in there. Who freaking knows?
Yeah, it could
Right.
definitely be Zana. And that's so exciting too, dude. So they touched on it a little bit today. The fact that we cannot repeat maps endlessly allows them to make each tile set or map unique, essentially. It can have its own unique items that drop there, its own unique rewards. They can make these points of interest wherein you find crazy things. I really like that. You're totally right. You're really not going to feel like you're being repetitive. And if you do end up liking a certain reward on a map, they used an example I think earlier, like desert temple. Well, then you're just going to look for all the desert biomes, and you're constantly going to be plotting your atlas out to try to find as many deserts as possible. I like that kind of exploration fantasy.
Oh, absolutely. I always make this example of why I'm so much a fan of PoE versus I have a hard time being a fan of other ARPGs. And my example is the hamster wheel problem. How good is the game at helping you not see that you're on a wheel? Is the way I look at it in terms of like how much you're going to enjoy it. The sooner you find out that I'm on a hamster wheel running, the sooner you're like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. But if they're adding in this sort of zone variation where you're not going over the same zone ever again and there's that interest, I think that's another layer where they're expanding it. I always felt like the part where I'm not on a hamster wheel with PoE 1 was the build creation. And mapping eventually started to get there, but what would keep me going throughout a league where I would keep playing is I would come up with a new project for a new build I wanted to try out. But if this variation in zones feels distinct enough and interesting enough, I think that solves one of the parts where one of the limiting factors where a lot of people probably fall off where I would start to fall off towards the end of the like part of the thing I would enjoy would start to fall off, and I would be getting carried by the build creation. I'm excited to see if that carries it over. Is that another part
Yeah.
that just helps with the enjoyment of playing it for throughout a long league type of thing?
Yeah, now they're gonna have multiple angles that they can kind of approach you from. Like maybe you really like one character and you feel like you can keep playing that character endlessly because everything else is so varied and you're tackling all these different challenges with that character. That totally makes sense. And I mean, with the characters themselves, Lance, like how do you think that people are sleeping on the ability to swap between weapons and basically entire skill sets? I feel like that's kind
I
of
don't know.
slept
I don't know
on.
if people are
You,
sleeping
like,
on it. It's something that's like probably just hard to picture. Like I think it's going to be a very powerful tool, and there's going to be probably some really smart things people come up with it. But ultimately, I think it's just like that's so hard to quantify. Having,
mm,
20 to 30, I don't know how many passives it is exactly, being able to swap that many passives on your tree, and it's an instant swap with like your character does the when you click the different ability. That's something where there's some definite build potential. And the other thing you were saying with playing one character throughout, like, enjoying that process throughout longer,
mm,
that's another thing where there's a lot of people there that like to just keep upgrading their character and progress it. And I think that's a big deal. That's a real big deal to have that extra enjoyment extended, is I would
yeah.
say.
And it's gonna feel more dynamic. Have you ever played Guild Wars 2 before?
I don't
No, you totally haven't.
I
Ah, it's
don't
okay.
think so. No, well, I'll caveat that with I'm not sure I played Guild Wars or Guild Wars 2 with
Yeah.
basically me and my siblings. We set up like a once a day or once per week thing where we get on and play a game together.
Mm,
And it was Guild Wars, but I don't know if it was Guild Wars 1 or 2 that we did,
okay.
and it was a pretty brief stint before we had things go on in each other's lives where we weren't able to match up schedules
Oh,
essentially.
that's totally fine. Well, Guild Wars 2, it has the dynamic weapon swapping system. So you can easily swap between weapon sets, and it feels so smooth in that game. And each weapon set, like Path of Exile 2, seems to have its own play style. And every time you switch from a bow to a great sword on a warrior, you feel very different and you can tackle very different challenges. I'm really hoping that fantasy continues in Path of Exile 2 and extends not only into the set of weapons we're getting with early access on launch, but beyond that. Jonathan just mentioned today, Path of Exile 1, what the heck is the difference between a sword and an axe, really? An axe is just better in most circumstances. He didn't say that, I'm saying that. In Path of Exile 2, they actually want to make those differences visual, realized by the players. I I think that's great. Like it's just going to give us so many different ways to try out these new skills and build types and all the like. Can you imagine swords actually being relevant, Lance? I'm so excited.
I think that's a very, very important thing. It's been so long in PoE 1 where it was essentially just you click axe because it does the most damage. You don't click sword because it doesn't do the most damage. And if you're able to differentiate it just beyond the realm of what does more damage to there's reasons to use this versus that. And I think the biggest thing they're doing that's going to help separate them is specific skills are used with specific weapons. It's really hard to grasp the identity of an axe versus a sword if they literally use 90% of the same skills. And it's going to feel for PoE1 players going into it, it's going to feel a bit weird at first not being able to use, multiple different skills with multiple different weapon types, but I think that's probably ultimately a good thing to give it that identity. And another thing about the weapon swap thing is I don't know if it's going to be enough passives to pull off, but if it's something where it can give you the ability to do something where uh, I'm 1 second using a crossbow and then I swap to a sword and shield. I don't know if that's even going to be in the realm of possibilities, but those sort of archetypes where it's like that fantasy of things that don't necessarily pair necessarily, like a battle mage, like of somebody who's has some melee abilities but also can use spells. I hope that's something that can end up being pulled off with the weapon set passives. It seems like a stretch to me because ultimately it's like 30 passives is a lot. I don't know if it's even up to 30 passives. But if it's enough to where you could take all that specific stat that's going into like an attack versus a spell or an ranged versus a melee and it could swap, and you're shooting an enemy, and all of a sudden you get cornered, and you pull out your freaking mace and shield, and you start going ham. That'd be just cool in terms of like the fantasy thematics of it, of
What
having
is
that.
your coolest clashing build that you would want to work? Because what I imagine is now a witch hunter witch with zombies and skeletons and the like. So what I mean by that is you're a mercenary, obviously, a witch hunter, but you have an army of skeletons and zombies and everything. So you're having a crossbow, but you also have a bunch of minions around you. I think that'd be kind of cool.
For me, I've always loved the battle mage idea of a dude who can do melee, has a sword and shield, but also has some caster abilities he can pair with it. I don't know if it's, to me that seems probably a bit too far fetched, and just the limitations of how build making works and how specialized you want to be to optimize for things. But if it is possible, it would be so freaking cool.
Hey, Lance, it could be the Templar that is supposed to arrive at some point during early access. Did you hear today that Righteous Fire works basically the same as in Path of
They
Exile 1?
okay.
The
I got
stats are
linked a
just different.
clip, and he was like, "It's drastically different." Did what clip did you watch? I guess
But
I didn't get a chance to watch the whole interview.
he
I basically watched
like
this when I got home.
DM asked, he elaborated. He said, "Well, how is it different?" He's like, "Oh, well, you light yourself on fire. People are affected around you by fire, and the stats are different." I, what is
Stat
that? How can that be
Dude,
drastically different?
it just scares me because the stats are different. Could be, oh, it lasts for a duration, or it goes on cool. I've been like, people have been basically been chatting in my chat ever since that initial clip about the MTX thing, just coming up with like the most obnoxious little changes that could make it not the feels good chill play style. So that's like in the back of my head is all those variations of ways to make it not righteous fire.
Dude, I've got it. It's Hammer of the Gods from the Warrior, but for the Templar, where it's like an ultimate ability. Like
Oh,
maybe you light yourself on fire for 3 seconds in a huge
no,
AoE, and
please
then it's on
no.
cooldown.
Please just let it be righteous fire. Let me light myself on fire permanently once at the start of the map and continue to burn until I either die or finish the map.
Hey, maybe they'll do a transformation for the Templar in which you turn into this radiant angel of some sort and have that same sort of effect. That'd be cool. Probably would be
I
limited though.
hope I okay, I'll say this. I hope it's not ascendancy node. I One of the things I love so much about righteous fire is there's a lot of ways to build it, and using a lot of different approaches with different ascendancies. I'm still like hesitant on the skills being tied to ascendancies. I want to keep an open mind, but it's definitely one of those things where it feels it's a lot different than the PoE I'm used to in terms of like that ability to be like, okay, I see this skill. That's not necessarily something you would think thematically works with this, but then through enough manipulation of the passive tree and gear, this is actually a majestic combination that works really well. Um,
Hmm.
but I want to keep an open mind to the skills being tied to ascendancy points. It's just one of those things where I have a hesitation about it, as this feels weird. It's not the standard what PoE has been for me.
Does the hesitation lie in the fact that it's going to narrow down archetypes to like certain ascendancies so much? As in, like the Chronomancer, only person that's ever going to be able to use this crazy temporal rift that's like on a PoE 1 unique right now. Only person that will be able to freeze time. Nobody else should be able to do it, right? Same with the demon form. That's kind of shocking that it's not an ascendancy, right? What a cool thematic thing. Imagine using it on some different build, making a righteous fire demon form in some way in the far flung future. That's never going to be a possibility. Is it that, or is it something else?
It's pretty much that,
Pretty
and
much that.
I might open up the acceptance sorts, but it's definitely one of those things where it's just like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. Ultimately, it's not the end of the world if there's some specialized skills to certain ascendancies, and that's just like that's their core identity. This is one of the things I've been like unsure about how I feel about it, which is like the forbidden flesh and flame thing where you can steal the identity from other ascendancy. And I watched a part of the podcast with you, Dreamcore, and
Silver?
Silver. Yeah. And Dreamcore's answer, I think, was fairly decent on this, where he was saying essentially it removes identity from the ascendancy when you do that, because what ends up happening is you click the good ascendancy and you take the one thing that's special about the other one, because and that's what kind of what it really did. Because like, for I'll give Trickster as the example, because Trickster's where this is one of the most egregious things is you never click Saboteur and you never click Assassin now, because Trickster's just better, and then you steal their one good node those other classes have, and then they never get played because their thing that is their identity, or their important part, is no longer relevant. And I think I'm starting to see his point and be like, he's kind of right. Maybe Forbidden Flesh and Flame was a rough thing for class identity. Maybe in that same tone, having these very specialized things that are special about that class is maybe some level of good thing. We have so much freedom in being able to customize the attributes, being able to choose all these other skills. Maybe it's fine that ascendancies have their thing, their identity.
Yeah, I think the big reason that they're doing it is because there's going to be 36 ascendancies, and they've committed to the fact that they're not tying ascendancies to specific weapons. So they have to, there's almost like limited design space if they want to base everything on passives, right? I think it's way easier to give an ascendancy a wild cool skill that's tied to there than to design a very interesting passive and then do that 36 times for how many big nodes are on ascendant? Are there 10 or 11? Are there
They've been
varying
doing like
amounts, Captain Lance?
10. Yeah, it's like an average of 10, which PoE
Average of
one's like
10?
an average of 7.
Right.
So
That's tough. Whereas if they have a very specific vision of, okay, I want the Infernalist to be able to summon a demon dog and turn into a demon, and then we can add 9 other passives, maybe a few other actives too, we don't know, onto that ascendancy. My crackpot theory is they're going to keep Path of Exile 2 going forever, Lance, and they're going to add more ascendancy classes because they're so niche. A lot of these, they're so niche, man, from what we've seen. Maybe it'll
mhm.
open up a little bit, but demon dog, demon form, some stuff to do with ignite and fire damage, all that. I think there's a lot of design space if they attach skills to these ascendancies. So
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. The other thing I want to say is, it's
yeah.
from a balance perspective, it is way more controlled if there's a limitation of where this can be used in a vacuum, which is like, tied to the ascendancy. That's like the I think one of the biggest nightmares of the style of game they're making is, how the hell do you balance this thing when you have 300 skills, 300 support gems, 1500 passives, you throw all this stuff, there's just no one that can possibly freaking see all the possibilities of what could be broken. I mean, there's a reason why people play 10,000 hours, and they're good at a few things in the game, and there's a ton of things they just don't know anything about because there's too much information to freaking condense into a brain.
Yeah. You missed one big customizer as well. Unique items. There's going to be at least 200 in early
Oh yeah.
access. Lance, if you could choose any 3 unique items from Path of Exile 1 to make it into Path of Exile 2, what would you choose personally?
3 unique items from Path of Exile 1 to be in Path of Exile 2.
Yeah.
Um
I know that there are a few meme
the,
staples
n-
of
the
your
number
builds.
the
Yeah.
number one I'd probably have to say on my list is Ivory Tower, and that's probably shouldn't be a surprise to many people. The number 2 on my list, so he said Wrathpith. Is Wrathpith on there? Is Wrathpith on my list? I do really like things that encourage you to invest into a stat and get a benefit out of it. Wrathpith would be probably on the list. If I like, as I didn't think about this beforehand, Wrathpith is a good example. Ivory Tower, I know for sure, confident number 1 on my list. Wrathpith, we can say, is on there. For a third one, I'm gonna go with, man, this is tough.
He's ramping exiles. I'm going to let the silence linger. It
I
applies more pressure to Lance.
I'll say for my third one, this is gonna be a little bit this is gonna be a weird one. I'm gonna say Glimpse of Chaos. And it's just because that item represents so many interesting possibilities in terms of like, it's an item where people literally invest into it to corrupt it into a different item. Like, it's one of the most unique things in PoE where it's got special implicits. It has a special property where you can corrupt it into another item. And on top of that, the item as itself is a pretty neat little item in terms of just its base prime properties. I've used builds where I'm literally just using it for the helmet, and I've used builds where I'm using it for corrupting it into a different unique. I just think it's like just a cool freaking unique. I love Val Orbs, one of the best mechanics in PoE, and it expands upon that mechanic in terms of doing something that you wouldn't normally expect.
You're naturally segueing into the. I was literally just going to bring up corruption in PoE 2 and then it being the final step of crafting. What are your thoughts on the new vectors of corruption and the fact that, how about that zero 0.8 to 1.2 multiplier jackpot hit that you can hit with corruption on items going over the standard roll range? I mean,
Corruption is honestly, with the changes they made to it, the brick scenario you can get is like a lot less likely. I'm already full on board addicted to like reflecting mists where you're YOLOing it to attempt to get a good multiplier and attempt to have it give you the good affixes. And I already see that as, if I'm making a late game character, I'm making this item 10 times and I'm going to click the button on it until it hits the outcome. And I think that's going to be the case for Valorbs too, where people are going to make, really good rares and they're going to YOLO the Vals until they get the good outcome. I think that's going to be a thing people are doing.
oh yeah,
100%. There's a lot of people that freaking love min-maxing like that and taking the risk.
100%. And on that, they're only in the Trial of Chaos, I think. What are your thoughts on them finally going all in, doing what they've talked about in PoE 1 for a long time, and separating out rewards almost solely into separate mechanics? Like the radius jewels.
They said Valorbs are exclusive to
I think
the
they're
trial.
exclusive. Yeah, to the Trial of Chaos. Chat, correct me if I'm
Are
wrong.
you sure? I'm gonna say I thought they said it can drop other places, but you can get them at a more concentrated amount in Trial Chaos. But
I
I could
was
be wrong.
wrong. I was
I could
wrong.
be wrong.
No, you're right. They're just dropping in higher values. Same like jewels and the Trial of the Sekima.
But they still have exclusive currencies like what was the other thing you get from
The
Trial
things
Chaos
that
that
you
they
socket
mentioned?
into your gear, the
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 Soul
Val
Core thing.
cores, power cores, power cores.
Yeah, those things.
Yep.
And they're doing that for basically all the different mechanics. Is special. I love that about stuff. One of the biggest pains, and this is the example, is like, why do I kill the Uber synthesis boss and not drop a synth item? There's so many times where I'm just like, it feels so much better when the thing that is related to the thing is where the thing drops. And they, that got drowned out with things like, fossils. Where's the best place to get it? Simulacrum or heist. It's not delve. And so I hope they stick to that identity of like keeping the specialized drops to the specialized mechanic, because it definitely feels good to be, I'm doing this mechanic for this reward and that's where I get it, where you can
Mm-hmm.
actually focus it.
Yeah. The teardrops on bosses too are pretty interesting. If you fight, tier 1, tier 2, 3, 4 bosses, it unlocks new items. And then Mark said, it sounds like every pinnacle boss has a tier 4 drop that is a modular item of some sort, like your Watcher's Eyes or your
Oh,
Forbidden
that's
Flesh and
crazy.
Flame. What could that? I wonder if it's just going to be something basically ripped like that from PoE 1, or if they're going to go with some other wild design space. What we saw with that which was taken, and what's the new one that drops from Ubers that I'm never going to get my hands on? The
The
Paramount.
new
What is it?
the
Oh,
new
oh
one that
God.
drops from,
What is it? The one that you form together? You get the fragments from the Ubers, and it
the
has
utmost. The
the
utmost.
utmost. That one.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
has got
right.
the four best stats in the game: max
Yeah,
res,
and it has the
suppress,
wild
defense,
variants.
and yeah, huge roll
Yeah.
range.
Yeah. I'm thinking they'll go with something like that for launch.
Oh, that's gonna be freaking really cool when people are first killing those bosses. I already can see it. People are gonna be like, so and so just dropped this item from this boss, and people are gonna be like, just like, oh, that's insane, because it's there's unless they fail on the data mine thing, which honestly in the more recent leagues, I think they've done better at mitigating the data mine on like discovered uniques where we don't really know about certain uniques until they actually get found in game.
Hmm.
So I think they'll manage that again, because we didn't really know quite a few of the uniques going into even Settlers League until they were actually found. So I think that's going to be the case. I mean, maybe we knew the names, but we didn't know like the stats or something. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping they manage that, because that's going to be really cool. The first people to get to certain boss fights and actually beat the harder difficulties. I wonder what the time frame on that's going to be, because I think it's going to be based on the way Mark talked about them being the hardest bosses they've ever done. I think it's actually going to maybe take a bit before people have characters that are actually capable of doing them.
Well, the thing is too, You need to down everything with one chance, and you got 100 to 0. So it's not like current Pee Wee 1, where, Ben can go in, kind of gauge everything a little bit, maybe almost die once, and then go back into the fight where it's at 20% health or something. No, you got a 100 to 0. All these bosses.
And they're gonna probably have different mechanics based on maybe the different like HP bar of the boss. Like in the first phase, you maybe die to a certain mechanic. You're like, okay, I know what that does now. You go refarm it. You go again. You beat the first phase, and then the next phase may has a different mechanic that takes you out and says, "Not today." So we'll see what that's like.
I want to touch on this too with the bosses and the Atlas. Something that I am a fan of, but it's going to piss me off beyond belief on launch. If you fail a map and it's leading to a boss arena or a special node, and there's no other path there, it's done. You're locked out. You got to find a different way to do it, another one of those nodes. The same happens where if you die to a lieutenant before fighting an Uber boss, the Uber boss just nopes out and disappears and you lose the Uber boss. Like, how many people are going to... Is this going to last? Like, I
That's
like
gonna
it.
be. This will be a trial period for like okay. In my mind, I like the idea of there being a cost and there's gravity to the situation. And it's not necessarily the gravity of you losing your character like hardcore. You know, there is gravity to
Mm-hmm.
it, but it's not the gravity of freaking losing your entire character progression. But man, that's gonna be kind of tilted too. So I don't know. I don't know how that's gonna go by feedback wise. Like it's gonna be super satisfying when you get those wins.
Yes.
But for the cost, dude, I don't know how it's gonna play out. I am genuinely quite curious to see what the overall feedback will be from the larger player base on the new pseudo like semi hardcore aspect of losing your maps, one port or one death per zone or whatever, the hard resets. I like the idea of how much it's going to improve the satisfaction level when you beat those encounters, but there's going to be a cost of, does this feel too bad? Is it worth it?
Oh, yeah. And defenses are actually going to be a thing that you are truly caring about from the moment you step into maps. It's not going to be, oh, I'm not, I don't care. I'm just going to blast through, die a few times. It's okay. You actually need to care about it. You just can't. You can't just not invest into defenses, or else you will brick your
Build's got to be
Atlas
good.
and have to do a cataclysm. I'm guessing that's what it's going to be. You're going to like cause a cataclysm on the Atlas and it's just going to blow up. And then, okay, you're back at square one. What do you think about that? Being able to completely reset your Atlas seed. Do you think
Oh,
people will
like if you
abuse that in
brick
any
it,
way?
I don't think there's an abuse case. Like the way I would think about it is like, let's say you spawn, you have your initial map zone or where you start in,
Yep.
you have four nodes next to you, right? Like what's the difference between that and traveling one direction a couple nodes and you've discovered four more nodes? Like I don't know if that's necessarily something that would matter in terms of like you're gonna be generating more content regardless
I'm so
of
ready for the races where, Ben and Jungron load into the map and the Atlas, and like one of them has the perfect layout, to get to
dude,
the
I
bosses
don't think it's
first.
gonna I don't think it's gonna be that deterministic or that
You don't
helpful,
think
but
so?
maybe.
It's definitely, he did say, Jonathan, the law of averages. Everybody's experiences will average out at the end of the day when in terms of like the randomness of the game. Your item drops, the way
Yeah.
your Atlas is seated, the monsters in them. That's another thing. In PoE 1, there is rhyme and reason to the monsters and maps. In PoE 2, of the 400 types, it's completely random. That's also interesting. The encounters that they're going to create, I mean, this potentially means the most annoying monster could always pop into your maps. We could just get porcupines every single map that we run in PoE 2 if we're unlucky enough.
I mean, I don't know if it'll be porcupines or some other mob type, but I guess we'll find out what monster type we don't want to see on a regular
Wait,
basis, and then it might not be a case where you're actually seeing it every map. But if you recognize that's the monster that keeps screwing me over, and every time you see it, it's gonna start impacting your brain. And be like, how do I beat this stupid thing?
wait,
How do I have a counter for this? Because it's countering me hard right now.
when you played in LA, were there any monsters that stuck out to you as kind of like, ah, dang? Or any
Oh,
bosses in Act 1?
in Act 1, not too much. In Act 2, there were some projectile mobs that were just absolutely destroying me in Yosis, which there were like some long range sniper type monsters, but it's
Oh.
also like a thing where we had no idea what we were doing. You know, we had a couple hours to log in and play, and we're just bum rushing things without really looking at what passes we're clicking or necessarily knowing how to gear properly. All that sort of stuff adds up, and it's one of those things where knowledge is going to matter so much. And initially, when no one's freaking played except for I think the only people that would have any extended play experience would be the people that had like the closed beta access type of thing. Everybody's going to be freaking running around like headless chickens, and it's going to
Yeah.
be it's going to be all over the map in terms of results and how people perform.
Yeah, I'm really curious if they had access to endgame or if it was just the axe or anything. That's we'll never find out. They're under NDA forever. Off Meta Michael, who I had on yesterday, he actually revealed when we were talking that he was in the first closed beta. And that's all he could tell me. And he said as soon as it ended, he booked a week off for launch week.
So he's convinced it's a good freaking game.
Yeah, I thought that was a great bomb drop. Just I played it. Yeah, I was in the beta. I can't say anything about it, but I did book PTO instantly, and I have not taken PTO off for a game ever. So yeah, so it's going to be
That's a
really,
pretty
really
strong
good.
endorsement.
It is a strong endorsement. Yeah, and he's a Diablo 2 player, and he skipped PoE, skipped Diablo, all the other Diablos, everything else. D2 to PoE 2, nothing else, which is a wild
Well, I
journey.
think that it's gonna be freaking fun when it's here.
Yeah,
Just 12 more days, 11 more days.
I know. Literally 11 days, 16 hours, man.
Count it
Now,
down.
I want you, as we wrap up here tonight, to put on your Jonathan Rogers hat. Okay, you're now the game director on Path of Exile 2. What's the system that you would want to put into the game, either from PoE1, another game, whether it's not even in the genre, just something that you would love to see in an ARPG with the Path of Exile 2 skin wrapped around it?
The Path of Exile 2 skin wrapped around it.
No, you're a big Age of Empires player. Do you think we could ever control our own armies in Ray Class? You know, pit them
Dude, I
against each
have
other?
no ability to even process how you would put an RTS into PoE. That seems way too out there.
Clip it and ship it.
There's no way. I can't see it at all. Can't see it. But I think for me the biggest thing in PoE in terms of like actually like playing the game, not necessarily just build making, it's always been boss fights. So I think I could be a big fan if there was a system like, let's say, a bounty hunter system that added some extra challenge or some sort of thing where it's like, hey man, I need you to do this or hunt down this item for me, and then it's like some sort of mission where your character has to go defeat this thing, and maybe it has some extra mechanics added to it or some extra reward or change and modification, something like that, like a bounty hunter system. I think that'd be kind
Dude,
of
that would work on the new Atlas too. Like, I need you to venture to a jungle and find this particular boss that we know is in the jungle node. Oh, I think that's really cool. I love that. I thought you were going to say something like a boss rush system, like Black Myth Wukong, where you're just going from like boss to boss to boss to boss and not
I don't have
stopping.
any concept. I have not. I don't know. I have not looked at like any Black Myth Wukong footage, so I don't even
Oh,
know
it's
how that
just,
game works.
you literally just fight a boss and then you go to the next boss and the next boss. There's just no downtime ever.
Constant progression, basically, or constant just seeing. Okay, you can beat that one. Can you beat the next one?
Exactly. So like a boss gauntlet in Path of Exile, I
I'd
thought
be
that'd be
down for
pretty
that.
cool with the boss centric design of the game and everything. So yeah, I thought that'd be a cool idea. I like the bounty hunter
The
system.
bosses are just, they look so freaking good. The
Did
more
you?
recent video I watched of the Doriani freaking mechanical crab thing, just it blows
I
my mind. The
I
animations and
clicked
stuff
out
of
of that
that.
one, dude, because I was like, we are 11 days out. I'm just not gonna spoil myself on it. I saw the mechanical crab and I was like, do I
It's
do it?
it's
Nah,
really
I
freaking
won't
cool,
do it.
man. You're gonna like it when you play it.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Did you get the top tier supporter pack with the book by chance?
I have not gotten a supporter pack yet, but I'm Okay, listen, I just bought freaking 4 tires for our minivan. I can't shell out the 500. It's gonna
Ooh,
be too much.
ooh.
I'll probably buy one of the cheaper ones.
Yeah, yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. I haven't had to do any car work for quite some time. Very lucky here. So I did splurge on the pack.
Fair enough, fair enough.
It's nice. It's beautiful. It has all the boss artwork in there and everything.
Yeah,
Strangely
I was
missing
I was hearing that
Doriani.
you got spoilers on spoilers in that thing.
Dude, yeah, there are tons of spoilers in it. So be careful, be wary. Hopefully, nobody posts them all over the internet without any tags or anything, because it does completely outline Act 5, lore and all. I was shook when I read it. I was like, I might as well be the one to do it because I know someone's going to send it to me. I'm going to click open the link and it's going to be plastered all over. And I read very quickly. So why not just read it now? But, yeah. So
Sure, mister, I'm gonna save it for when the launch is here. You're totally
I,
gonna look up that Doriani's mechanical fight
no,
now. I
no.
know it.
Okay. 11
You're
days.
gonna spoil it for yourself.
No,
I can see it.
11 days versus when are we going to get to Act 5? I'm guessing like June of next year, maybe.
You're not gonna make it 11 days. There's no way, man.
Oh,
There's no way. That's
I'm
such a
totally.
long time.
It's it's the open world gaming video, right?
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
just gonna block the channel. It's okay.
Yeah,
I'm
that's nope. Don't. You're gonna unblock it. In a moment of weakness, you're gonna go. You're gonna splurge. You're gonna look at it
now
full in all
what
its glory.
what I'm wondering, Lance, is do you think they spoiled the final act boss fight? There's no way he's the final act boss. I don't think they do that.
Well, I mean, like, so we know he seems to be a part of, like, I don't know if he's the Keurig of PoE2. I don't know if that's
Right.
the right thing to call him because he's
Mm.
there in the mapping showcase. He's literally like they have that little freaking visual of him in the freaking sun, and that freaking sick looking silhouette black outline of him talking, right? So I could see it being the thing where you fight him, and then that's the conclusion of the act three, and that's how they chain you over there. But at the same time, I mean, there's obviously going to be, acts, the other acts that we don't have yet that we're doing the cruel system instead.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that doesn't really make sense because there's going to be some sort of skip that bridges us to the fact where we're doing endgame. Like I don't know, freaking now.
I'm crackpot on they're going with timelines and Doriani's gonna somehow be in the present or he never really died. He was going through all these different multiverses, something like that. There's some not in the lore book, I swear. In the endgame showcase, the dialogue options for Doriani reveal some pretty interesting information. So I won't say them on stream, but if you want some lore spoilers for the story, they're in that showcase. So they're pretty interesting. Are you at all after the cinematic? Come on, are you going to listen to all the dialogue, Lance? Please.
No, no. Okay, listen. I'm down to watch a cinematic, but listen to all the lore books. Every time I click on, let's say, what's his name? The Envoy, and he starts doing his monologue, you know, every time I was just like, this guy just can't stop yapping. I'm just here to kill some monsters, man. And I just book right past him. No idea what that guy has said. And I've listened to his dialogue in the background of me playing every freaking new league, where you run into him. I I'll find out the lore later on from other people telling me about it, but for the most part, I'm just gonna be booking it through, be like, I'm gonna kill this monster and I'm gonna get my 30 spirit bonus. I'm gonna go get these 2 passives, more power, and I'm just gonna keep, I'm gonna enjoy the fights when I get to it, but I'm gonna have no idea why I'm there.
Okay, okay, fine. Well, hopefully those cinematics that are in game kind of bridge the gaps between the acts and you have some idea of what's going on. Hopefully. We'll see.
Maybe we'll see.
All right, before we hop off here, I didn't even ask you, what are you planning on starting? Do you know yet? Or is it going to be a launch
I
day thing?
Okay, based on the information I know so far, I think I need to do a witch or a sorceress just because I want to be started on that side of the tree because I think ES is going to be strong.
Mm.
My initial thought was going to be Infernalist to do the Demoness, but upon further investigation, from what I can tell, the demon transformation makes you start to degen life directly. It bypasses ES, which means it would probably break a CI character. So I might pivot into going sorceress and then make my decision on like an elemental spellcaster, either chronomancer or stormweaver, after I get to the ascendancy altar, click on it and look over all the nodes. I'm like probably make a last minute decision.
Okay. All right. Bold choice. I think the sorceress will be a little busted. All those skills in the clear look wild, especially the projectiles and like the
I can't
ball
get over
lightning.
what they did to Fireball.
Yeah.
Fireball looks so freaking fun to me. You shoot an enemy, it bursts in, goes all directions. It's like I think Grimro told me he said it's the better tornado shot. It's tornado shot but better, type of thing. I don't know if it actually ended up mechanically being that good, but uh
You say Grimro? Did Grimro see the reveal?
Grimro, oh yeah, he's pretty excited about PoE. I was talking to him a little bit in I think we were both in Tuna's chat
Oh,
when Tuna
awesome.
was looking at different stuff.
That's good to hear. I miss that voice. I remember listening to it back in like 2019, 2020 during Delirium and everything when I first started playing, listening to those guides and the like. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome
I
to
think
hear.
I think he might end up making some videos on PoE too. We'll see. I freaking he's got the goaded introduction, so I'm real excited if he's coming back to log in to make a couple videos.
Yeah. To juice some maps and the like.
Yep.
All right, well, Lance, it was wonderful talking to you, man. Could you give everybody on the stream chat right now, the VOD on YouTube, shout out to where they can find you? YouTube, Twitch?
Hey everybody, my name's Captain Lance. You can find me at twitch.tv/Captain Lance 9 or on YouTube Captain Lance 9. That's where I've just started trying out doing a dual stream to YouTube and Twitch, and so you can catch me live. Either one works, and so yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, everybody on YouTube, you've watched this far into the video. You need to subscribe to the channel. What are you doing? And make sure you like the video. Wonderful chat with Lance. I'll see you in early access, man. It's going to be a super fun time. Talakar, everybody.